July 30th, 1945. 12 minutes past midnight. The war was almost over. Japan was days from surrender. Your father might have thought the worst was behind him. He was wrong. This is the story of the USS Indianapolis, a heavy cruiser, 10,000 tons of American steel, 9 8-inch guns, pride of the fleet. She had just completed the most important mission of the war. A mission so secret, even most of the crew didn't know what they were carrying. 1,196 men sailed on her final voyage. Only 316 came home. The Indianapolis disaster would become the worst sea tragedy in United States Navy history. But that's not the story your father knew. He knew about duty, about sacrifice, about men who kept their word even when the Navy wouldn't keep theirs. He knew about the mission that ended the war and the price 1,200 men paid for it. This is what he couldn't tell you. This is why he respected every man who came home from the Pacific. This is the story of the Indianapolis. July 15th, 1945. Mare Island Naval Shipyard, California. The Indianapolis had been in dry dock for repairs. A kamikaze had hit her off Okinawa in March, killed 9 sailors, nearly sank her. She should have sat out the rest of the war. Instead, on a quiet Sunday morning, something happened that no one expected. 2 Army trucks pulled up to the pier. Empty shipyard, no workers, just guards. Unusual. The first truck carried a wooden crate, 15 feet long, heavily guarded, unmarked. The second truck carried 2 Army officers, a major and a captain. They wore no insignia showing their unit. They carried a small lead bucket. Ensign Harlan Twible was officer of the deck that morning, fresh from the Naval Academy, 23 years old. Wanted to fly jets. Didn't want to serve on an old cruiser. He watched as the wooden crate was loaded into the port hangar. Watched as the 2 Army officers came aboard with their bucket. Nobody told him what was inside. Nobody told Captain McVeigh either. Not yet. What Twible didn't know, that crate contained the uranium projectile for Little Boy, the atomic bomb that would destroy Hiroshima. What the crew didn't know, that lead bucket contained uranium-235, the nuclear core. Half of the world's first atomic bomb was now aboard the Indianapolis. Captain Charles Butler McVeigh III received his orders that afternoon. Proceed immediately to Tinian Island, Northern Marianas. Deliver cargo. Tell no one what you're carrying. Speed, maximum. Escort, none requested. Timeline, critical. McVeigh came from Navy royalty. His father had been an admiral. He'd graduated Annapolis in 1920, earned a Silver Star earlier in the war. Good officer, respected captain, 47 years old. This would be his last voyage. The Indianapolis left San Francisco Bay at 8 the next morning, July 16th, 1945. Destination, Pearl Harbor, then Tinian. Mission, top secret. Speed, 29 knots. Faster than she'd ever sailed. Your father might have served on ships like this. Cruisers were the workhorses of the Pacific War, not as glamorous as carriers, not as celebrated as battleships,
but they did the job. Indianapolis had been Admiral Spruance's flagship, Fifth Fleet, the Philippine Sea, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. She'd earned 10 battle stars, Navy Unit Commendation, had been in the thick of it since Pearl Harbor. Her crew was experienced, battle-tested, ready for anything, except what was coming.
The voyage to Pearl Harbor took 3 days. The Indianapolis arrived July 19th, refueled, departed the same day, still racing west. On board, sailors who'd been at sea for years, Marines standing watch, officers planning the invasion of Japan. They knew the war was winding down. Germany had surrendered in May. Japan was being bombed daily. But invasion was still coming. Operation Downfall, scheduled for November. Casualties estimated 1 million Americans. Your father knew men making those plans. What the crew didn't know, the cargo they were carrying would make that invasion unnecessary. 2 weeks later, Little Boy would fall on Hiroshima. 140,000 dead in an instant. 3 days after that, Fat Man would destroy Nagasaki. 5 days later, Japan would surrender. The war would end because 1,200 men delivered a bomb they didn't even know they were carrying.
July 26, 1945. The Indianapolis arrived at Tinian Island, 10 days after leaving San Francisco. Fastest crossing ever recorded. San Francisco to Tinian. The wooden crate was unloaded. The Army officers took their bucket and left. Captain McVeigh still didn't know what he'd delivered. The crew was dismissed for shore leave. 12 hours later, new orders arrived. Proceed to Guam, then Leyte Gulf, Philippines. Prepare for the invasion of Japan. Still no escort. The Indianapolis left Tinian that afternoon. She would never reach Leyte.
What Captain McVeigh didn't know. Japanese submarine I-58 was hunting in the Philippine Sea. Commander Mochitsura Hashimoto, veteran submariner. His orders, sink anything American. The I-58 carried 6 torpedoes. The Indianapolis had just entered his patrol area, alone, unescorted, making 17 knots in a straight line. Your father knew how dangerous those waters were. He knew submarines were everywhere in the final months of the war. He knew what happened to ships that sailed alone. This is what happened to the Indianapolis.
Sunday evening, July 29th, 1945. Beautiful night in the Philippine Sea. Clear skies, calm water, 5-foot swells. Perfect sailing weather. Seaman First Class Woody James had just finished his watch. Midnight to 8 in the morning. Got relieved 15 minutes early. Went down to the galley. Had a cup of coffee. Got his blanket from his bunk. Went topside to sleep. Too hot below deck. Used his shoes for a pillow. Laid down under the overhang of the number 1 turret. That's where he was when the first torpedo hit.
00:15 hours, July 30th. 2 torpedoes, Type 95, launched from I-58 at 1,500 meters. Running time, 63 seconds. The first torpedo struck the Indianapolis on the starboard bow. The explosion ripped through the forward compartments, destroyed the forecastle, killed dozens instantly. 5 seconds later, the second torpedo hit, near amidships, right under the powder magazine. The second explosion literally split the ship open. Fires erupted from the magazines. Smoke poured from every hatch. The forward part of the ship was gone. Power failed instantly. Communications destroyed. No way to send a distress signal. The Indianapolis began listing to starboard, sinking by the bow. Woody James went from sound asleep to airborne in half a second, up and down like a rag doll between the deck and the turret overhang. When he landed, the ship was already dying.
Captain McVeigh was thrown from his emergency cabin on the bridge. First thought, we've been hit. Second thought, get to the bridge. He made it topside in seconds. What he saw? His ship breaking apart. The bow was completely submerged. The stern was rising. The ship was rolling to starboard at an impossible angle. He tried to give orders. No power, no intercom, no way to communicate except by voice. He shouted to pass the word, "Abandon ship!" Some heard him. Most didn't. Below decks was hell. Compartments flooded instantly. Hatches jammed shut. Men trapped in the dark. Seaman Dick Thielen was sleeping topside too. Went into the air when the torpedoes hit. Came down holding a cable on the outside of the ship. He never went below again. Dr. Lewis Haynes, the senior medical officer, was asleep in officer country. The explosion threw him across his cabin. He grabbed his life vest and headed for the main deck. When he got there, wounded men were everywhere. He couldn't help them. The ship was going down.
Ensign Harlan Twible found himself on deck with no officers in sight. 325 men around him, panicking, looking for orders. He was 23 years old, fresh from the academy. He took command, started organizing men, getting them to the rails, cutting loose rafts, throwing anything that floated overboard, all while the ship was sinking beneath his feet. The Indianapolis was top-heavy. All the guns and fire directors added during the war. She'd always been prone to listing. Now, she was rolling completely over. Men were jumping from the high side, sliding down the hull. The ship was almost perpendicular to the water. 12 minutes since the torpedoes hit. Marine Corporal Edgar Harrell jumped from the fantail. Didn't want to get sucked down when she went under. He swam hard, away from the ship, as fast as he could. When he looked back, the stern was pointing straight at the sky.
00:27 hours, 12 minutes after the torpedo struck. The USS Indianapolis rolled completely over. Her stern rose high, then she slipped beneath the surface. Gone. Woody James was in the water by then. He kicked away from the ship. Didn't want the suction pulling him down. He watched her disappear, hundreds of yards away now. The ship was still moving forward when she sank. Then she was gone. Suddenly, it was quiet. 300 men went down with the ship. 900 were in the water. The nightmare was just beginning.
Monday morning, July 30th. First light. The survivors were scattered across miles of ocean. Some had life vests, some had rafts, most had nothing but the clothes they were wearing. All of them were covered in fuel oil, thick black bunker oil, in their eyes, in their mouths, on every inch of skin. At least it kept the sun off.
The men formed into groups, 7 distinct clusters scattered across the Philippine Sea. The largest group had about 400 men. Only life vests, no rafts, no supplies. Dr. Haynes was with them, the senior officer in the water for that group. He started organizing, taking a head count, checking for wounded. Many were already hurt. Burns, broken bones, shrapnel wounds. Nothing he could do. No medical supplies. Just try to keep them alive. Another group had the only raft with supplies, water breakers, emergency rations. Ensign Twible was with them, about 30 men. He rationed the water carefully, tested it first, tasted salt. The breaker had cracked. He told the men they had water, but they'd only get it when absolutely necessary. For the next 4 days, nobody asked for a drink. He couldn't believe it.
Captain McVeigh was with a small group, maybe 25 men. They had a raft. He assumed rescue would come quickly. The Navy knew where they were. They had a schedule. When they didn't arrive at Leyte on Tuesday, someone would notice. Someone would send planes. Someone would find them. He just had to keep his men alive until then. What he didn't know? The Navy wouldn't report them missing. Port directors in Leyte assumed the Indianapolis was delayed, or rerouted, or operating under radio silence. Nobody connected the dots. Nobody was coming.
Monday wore on. The sun rose, the temperature climbed. 95 degrees. No shade, no water. The fuel oil that had protected them at night was now cooking them. Men were already getting delirious. Sharks arrived by midday. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Oceanic whitetips, aggressive, curious, drawn by the explosions and the blood. They circled the groups, testing, watching. At first, they went for the dead. Bodies floated throughout the groups. Men who died from injuries, from bleeding out, from shock. The sharks took them first. Then they started on the wounded. Men with open wounds had to be separated. The blood drew sharks. If a shark came close, men would kick and splash and yell, try to scare it away. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Dick Phelan had a shark come right up to his face twice. Eyeball to eyeball, shark studying him, deciding whether to attack. Both times the shark swam away. Later he learned why. He was saturated with diesel fuel. Sharks didn't like the smell.
Late afternoon was the worst. That's when the sharks really fed. You'd hear men scream, then silence, then nothing. Another sailor gone. Woody James remembered it clearly decades later. Everything would be quiet. Then you'd hear somebody scream, and you knew a shark had gotten him. At night, they fed too. In the darkness, you couldn't see them coming.
Tuesday, July 31st, day 2. Still no rescue. Men were starting to drink seawater. Dr. Haynes warned them, told them it would kill them. The salt would destroy their kidneys, drive them mad. They drank anyway. Dehydration does strange things to the mind. By Tuesday afternoon, men were hallucinating. Some men said the Indianapolis hadn't sunk at all. She's just right there, they'd say, just under the surface. I was just down there, had a drink from the fountain. The commissary's still open. 3 or 4 men would believe them, would swim away to find the ship. They never came back. Others saw islands, coconut trees, fresh water, beautiful beaches. Come on, they'd shout. It's just over there. I can see it. More men would break away from the group, swimming toward nothing. Some men attacked their friends, convinced they were Japanese, or that they were hoarding water, or that they were trying to kill them. Men who'd served together for years,
who'd been through battles, who'd saved each other's lives, now fighting each other in the water. The officers tried to keep order, tried to keep the groups together, keep men from swimming away, keep them from drinking seawater. It was impossible.
Wednesday, August 1st, day 3. The groups were falling apart. Bodies everywhere. The dead outnumbered the living now. Men's life vests were waterlogged. Some were sinking, despite the vests. Others were too weak to keep their heads up. Dr. Haynes had been treading water for 3 days straight. No sleep, no food, no water. Just trying to keep men alive. He was losing that battle. Men were dying from everything now. Shark attacks, drowning, dehydration, hypothermia at night, hyperthermia during the day, salt poisoning, exhaustion, hallucinations leading them to swim away, and despair. Some men just gave up, took off their life vests, let themselves sink. They'd been in the water for 72 hours. Why keep fighting?
Wednesday afternoon. Captain McVeigh sat in his raft with his small group. They'd been remarkably lucky. Good raft, few losses, still organized. But even he was starting to wonder. 3 days. No rescue. No planes overhead. No ships on the horizon. Maybe nobody's coming, he thought. In the big group with Dr. Haynes, men were beyond reason now. 400 men had gone into the water with that group Monday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, maybe 200 were left, and they were scattered, drifting apart, too weak to stay together. Woody James was still alive, still fighting, but he was fading too. The sharks were everywhere. The sun was relentless. The salt water had destroyed his skin. He didn't think he'd see Thursday. Thursday morning, August 2nd, day 4, 11:25 local time. Lieutenant Wilbur Chuck Gwynn was flying a routine patrol. PV-1 Ventura bomber, twin-engine patrol plane, standard sector search. His antenna was malfunctioning. He descended to 300 feet to try to fix it. That's when he saw the oil slick. At first, he thought it was a submarine trail. He followed it for miles. Then he saw something else. Men in the water. Oil-covered faces, waving, splashing, slapping the water. Gwynn couldn't believe it. He didn't know the Indianapolis was missing. He didn't know what he was looking at. Just men in the middle of the ocean. Hundreds of them. Marine Corporal Edgar Harrell heard the plane first. Started yelling, "I hear a plane! I hear a plane!" Men started splashing, waving, screaming, praying. Anything to get the pilot's attention.
Gwynn descended lower, counted men, saw more groups scattered across miles. He dropped a life raft, transmitter, emergency supplies. Then he sent the message that would save them. Send rescue, survivors in water. Within an hour, more planes arrived. PBY seaplanes, Catalinas. They could land on water. One pilot, Lieutenant Adrian Marks, disobeyed orders. His orders, drop supplies, don't land. PBY weren't designed to land in open ocean. He watched sharks attacking men in the water. He landed anyway.
Marks pulled men onto the wings of his PBY. Inside the plane, on the fuselage, anywhere they could hold on. 56 men, more than the plane could carry. He couldn't take off, too heavy. The plane was damaged from landing. He didn't care. He saved 56 lives. By midnight, surface ships arrived. USS Doyle, USS Bassett, destroyers racing to the scene.
They pulled survivors from the water through the night, men too weak to climb the nets, covered in oil, burned, delirious, but alive. When the rescue crews asked survivors what ship they were from, some of the men still had fight in them. Just like a dumbass officer, they shouted, asking dumbass questions. They were home.
Friday morning, August 3rd. The last survivors were pulled from the water. 316 men saved, 880 lost. The worst sea disaster in United States Navy history. Dick Thielen was one of the survivors. When they pulled him onto the USS Doyle, he tried to stand. "I can get up," he said. He couldn't. Two sailors dragged him down the passageway, put him in a shower, cleaned the oil off, dressed his wounds. He passed out for 12 hours. When survivors woke up in the hospital ship, some didn't believe they were safe. They'd been hallucinating for days, seeing things that weren't there. Maybe this wasn't real either. Dr. Haynes woke up and immediately tried to do a head count, checking on his men, making sure they were alive. Someone had to tell him, "Sir, you're not in the water anymore. You're safe." He couldn't process it.
The Navy delayed announcing the tragedy, waited until August 15th, the same day Japan surrendered. The news was buried, hidden behind the celebrations. Victory in Japan, the war was over. Barely anyone noticed that 1,200 men had died just 2 weeks earlier. The men noticed.
Within weeks, the Navy convened a court of inquiry. They wanted someone to blame. Captain McVeigh was court-martialed, November 1945. 2 charges. First, failure to give the order to abandon ship in a timely manner. That charge was obviously false. The ship sank in 12 minutes. Communications were destroyed. McVeigh did everything he could. The court dismissed it immediately. Second charge, hazarding his ship by failing to zigzag. This was the charge that stuck. The trial was a travesty. Commander Hashimoto, the Japanese submarine captain who sank the Indianapolis, was brought to testify. First time in history an enemy combatant testified against an American officer. Hashimoto said visibility was fair that night, said zigzagging wouldn't have mattered. He was in perfect position. He would have sunk the Indianapolis regardless. American submarine experts testified the same thing. Zigzagging was practically useless against submarines. The court ignored them. Captain McVeigh was convicted, sentenced to lose 100 numbers in his rank. His career was effectively over. Admiral Nimitz later said the court-martial was a mistake. Secretary of the Navy remitted McVeigh's sentence, restored him to duty, but the damage was done. McVeigh stayed in the Navy until 1949, retired as a rear admiral, but he never got over it. Families of dead sailors blamed him, sent him letters, Christmas cards. "Merry Christmas, our holiday would be merrier if you hadn't killed my son." Year after year. The survivors defended him, wrote letters, testified, said McVeigh wasn't to blame. It didn't matter. The Navy needed a scapegoat. McVeigh was convenient. November 6th, 1968. Captain Charles Butler McVeigh III took his own life. He was 70 years old. Found clutching a toy sailor he'd been given as a boy for luck.
But the survivors never forgot, never stopped fighting for their captain. 50 years later, a 12-year-old boy in Florida named Hunter Scott was assigned a history project. He'd seen Jaws, remembered Quint's speech about the Indianapolis. He decided to research it. He interviewed 150 survivors, reviewed 800 documents, discovered the injustice done to Captain McVeigh. Hunter Scott testified before Congress. A 12-year-old boy, teaching senators about honor, about justice, about a wrong that needed to be righted. October 2000, 55 years after the sinking. Congress passed a resolution. Captain McVeigh's record should reflect that he is exonerated for the loss of the USS Indianapolis. President Clinton signed it. July 2001. Secretary of the Navy ordered McVeigh's record cleared, all evidence of his conviction expunged. Too late for Captain McVeigh, but not too late for the truth. Today, only one survivor remains alive. Harold Bray, born 1927. Lives quietly in California. The last living link to the Indianapolis. The others are gone now. Dick Thelen, Woody James, Dr. Haynes, Harlan Twible. All passed away in the decades after the war. Many never talked about it, just like your father.
This is the story your father might have told you, if he served in the Pacific, if he knew how to explain what it meant. The Indianapolis delivered the bomb that ended the war, saved hundreds of thousands of American lives, Japanese lives, made the invasion of Japan unnecessary. Then she paid the price. 1,200 men sailed on that final voyage. 900 went into the water. 316 came home. Your father knew men like this, men who completed the mission, who saved their brothers, who never got the recognition they deserved. Men who came home and didn't talk about it. Because how could they explain? This is what he wanted you to understand. War asks impossible things of ordinary men, and they do it anyway. The USS Indianapolis completed the most important mission of World War II. Her crew deserved better than they got. But they did their duty, just like your father, just like all of them.
This is why your father respected every man who served. This is why he understood sacrifice. This is the story of the Indianapolis, and this is what he wanted you to know.